Now this video is not about cars, but I need to use these cars to teach you a physics lesson. This car in front is doing a great service for the one behind it. This car is creating a slipstream for this one. It's a concept from aerodynamics, but we need a better set to explain this for you.
Now the intro of this video was made using the Intel Core Ultra laptops. More on that later.
Alright, back to the garage. So I was playing this driving simulator game on my PlayStation recently called Gran Turismo 7. And there's this concept in the game which, because it's sold as a realistic driving simulator, also exists in the real world with cars. That concept is called a slipstream. In the world of driving, a slipstream is defined as the partial vacuum created behind a moving vehicle, often used by other vehicles to help accelerate them. In aerodynamics, it's called drafting, where one object takes advantage of another object in front of it to exploit the lead object's slipstream and thus reduce the overall effect of drag. Drag is wind resistance. At really high speeds, as in car racing or even cycling, using somebody else's slipstream, somebody else going in front of you that you're sitting behind, can significantly reduce the driver behind's average energy expenditure and can even slightly reduce the energy expenditure of the vehicle in front. Basically, the driver in front punches a hole through the air and reduces drag and pressure for the person behind. In fact, there was a cyclist called Guy Martin he demonstrated slipstreaming aerodynamics by cycling behind a truck to achieve speeds of over 180 kilometers per hour. Think about how fast that is on a damn bicycle. Now, why am I telling you all this? Because if there's one thing I've learned over a decade of building companies and projects and failing at several of them with few successes here and there, is that ultimately almost all success I've seen in the real world, either for myself or my study of others, comes from slipstreaming. On social media, it can be tempting to think that success comes from extreme hard work or some guy fighting all odds, or the myth of that lone genius. If hard work was the only thing that mattered, then the person doing manual labor should be making the most amount of money. That's why, in my experience, most success comes from the slipstream, and it works exactly like it works with cars. Basically, almost every company or individual you know who became successful either became successful because their chosen industry itself started small and became big over time, or because they played right behind someone else moving fast with momentum. Take the example of Instagram. In 2007, the iPhone was launched.
And we are calling it iPhone.
And this new phone was seeing crazy momentum. It had created a slipstream for anyone who wanted to play on top of its app store. Instagram was one of those apps. Smartphones with cameras were already a thing in 2010, and that's even when the word selfie became popular. Back then, photos, including selfies, were often saved to the phone's gallery, and it was not necessarily shared right away. What Instagram did was enable sharing with a cute marketing play called filters. But their crazy growth was driven by a surge in demand for the iPhone. It's the exact same scenario with several podcasting content creators in India. How much of their success was predicated on Jio dropping data costs and them just coasting on the slipstream created by being early right behind the Jio wave? Like, just look at this graph. Anyone sitting on this graph would have seen crazy growth as long as the market wanted that growth. This graph also birthed many new unicorns who were standing right behind that car, waiting for the wave to happen. I mean, deep dive into the consumption stats. From 110 crore GB in 2016 to 8,600 crore GB in 2022. It works so proportionally that a content creator having, let's say, a total views of 100k people in 2016 and continuing to do his or her job would get several times bigger just because the internet consumer base got several times bigger without putting any additional effort. They were just doing their thing. The industry got bigger and they succeeded as a result of it. And slipstreams are so synergistic that how much of a creator's success is because of YouTube's growth, which is because YouTube used Android slipstream by coming packaged in the operating system. And how much of that Android OS growth was because of the growth of user demand for phones. It's all slipstreams through and through. Let's take another famous example of Zerodha. Look at this Nitin Kamath tweet that says that they were in the right place at the right time. When Aadhaar, UPI and DigiLocker took off, their platform, which had been around for a while, accelerated hard because of the slipstream created. Actually, one of the economic activities that the government needs to do is create some of these slipstreams for others, especially for private companies. You've seen the same thing with a lot of the UPI apps as well. But slipstreaming isn't just limited to industries and markets changing. It can also be with other human beings. I had been creating content for 7 to 8 years. Why did I accelerate this year? How much of this was related to me slipstreaming on Tanmay's momentum? Because I worked like a dog for almost a decade. Why this year? Why not any other year? It was also because AI really took off. I have a post from 2018 on my Facebook about OpenAI when absolutely nobody cared. One of my earliest posts on Instagram was about a robotic arm that OpenAI was working on all the way back then. But covering them back then didn't matter. But somehow it matters now. Why? It's the slipstream. I was early and the car towed me because I was in the right place, right time. And it takes a lot of humility to admit that. But all of this slipstreaming still requires work and being in the right place at the wrong time for years. Take another extreme example, which doesn't actually require much work. Being an investor. It's the most pure form of slipstreaming. In the investor world, they describe slipstreaming in the form of headwinds and tailwinds, but their only job is to catch the right fast-moving car punching a hole through the air. You could argue it's a hard job to figure out which car to stand behind because there's so many cars and most of those cars are not going anywhere, so there's still work being put in to figure out which car to sit behind. But the main problem with slipstreaming is frankly that most people catch the wrong slipstream or catch it too late. You need to catch a car when it is still slow, accelerating fast, and before other people have caught on to it. Something moving with high acceleration rather than something moving with high absolute speed. There's a difference between a car currently moving slow but accelerating fast versus a car moving fast but slowing down. You need to catch the first one. But it can sometimes be scary to switch to a new field or a new industry when it's too small. Like VFX or game development, these are all small industries. What if it doesn't work? What if it fails? In my personal case, what if I'm actually too early? I've actually built a lot of software in companies over the decade, and the number one cause of failure on postmortem of some of them was trying to do things too early before there was a slipstream created. The problem with this is sometimes the car can come and hit you from behind, and that can lead to an accident. For example, working on things like inverse kinematics in Unreal Engine 5 years ago. Was the metaverse even a thing back then? Was there consumer or investor demand back then? Not as much. A lot of ML engineers have this problem now of being a bit early and getting hit from behind. With LLMs, a lot of the old ways of doing things in machine learning had changed. Amazon even laid off a bunch of people from the Alexa team after ChatGPT came out because there was a new paradigm, a new way of doing things. Reddit was filled with job cuts in the ML division after LLMs became a thing. So sometimes being too early can be as bad as being too late. Remember Google Glass? Same issue. Being too early is actually as bad a problem as being behind. Don't complain about video editors or content creators who are suddenly doing well because they're in the right time, right place after Geo. One more thing about slipstreams. They can stop. The car in front of you can hit the brakes and that causes accidents behind. It happened to me with my last company in the pandemic. When the pandemic came, it was this inflection point where a slipstream was possible. We had some success with the community on Discord and we built out our own community app. But when the pandemic just disappeared, so did the slipstream. People went back to the old way of doing things. A lot of people on social media wonder why I have high loyalty from my audience. No, it's not because of the content I create today. Check out this tweet and read the comments too. That app was my last company, Avalon. Today, if you go to a good startup in India, a lot of people who work there were people from the Avalon app or the Avalon community. What we accidentally did, and we were still young and learning, but the key thing here was that slipstream may have started with me. I didn't know what I was doing, I was just trying something. But it got stronger because of the community itself. Every person who became successful or got a job or started a company created a slipstream for the next person. And that became powerful. This is actually a physics concept that drivers in motorsport take advantage of actually. In races, there's usually a big cluster of riders grouping or clumping together in what's called a peloton, slipstreaming behind one another. Airborne objects like birds do something similar called vortex surfing, where they create a V shape to take advantage of each other's momentum. If one girl gets a job, then she tells the company, hey, you should also talk to this other person from the community, and so on and so forth. So it's almost like they're riding that same V shape with each other. Formation is better than going alone. But it's still very important that the formation is a slipstream, some market that's growing, and that you are early but correct, or you will crash. And by definition, if a car's already going really fast, it's probably too late to slipstream behind it. But very recently, I discovered a new kind of slipstream I can generate. We actually spend a lot of our time hacking and trying new technology experiments, especially in the world of content. Most of the time, it fails. To us, hardware, blockchain, robotics, AR, VR, VFX, it doesn't matter. If it's an interesting technology, we'll try experiments. But when it works, I tend to make content about it. Combine that with my newfound access to early technology, and I'm able to show you a lot of what is coming. A lot of people create content to make money or whatever, but I actually use my distribution like a visa. Everyone in the offline world can tell you that, anyone who knows me. If I can get in anywhere, I can tell you about things before it happens. For example, I was the second creator/media person in the entire country of India to try Google Starline, a secretive project that hopes to replace meetings entirely using cameras and light field displays. And if it works, it's very valuable information for you. The word is called alpha that you can take advantage of. So the information and access I have today has sort of started becoming a slipstream as long as I can make videos about it. Same with the Meta Ray-Bans. After using it for a while, I can tell that it's going to become some new type of slipstream. Maybe Meta Ray-Bans won't be the specific product that gets big, but they will spark the market. They will kickstart it. I do want to mention that over the last decade, I've also gotten good at recognizing what slipstreams aren't there yet, like virtual reality. If you've been following me for 7-8 years, you know I've been using VR since forever. But user adoption for VR isn't that strong yet. It has an effect where people buy it but don't use it every day. The car is not moving fast enough yet for you to tow along. But at least for us, it is good to keep building and standing in tow in case everything accelerates. And you can smartly build games now which are adjacent to getting started doing full VR because the same underlying engines will be used to build VR experiences, Unreal and Unity. Same skill, slightly different application. And lastly, also remember that sometimes I can be wrong. Generally, I try not to be, and I'm trying to be more measured with my words and ideas these days because I know how many people need some new slipstream instead of standing in the traffic jam that is the React developer job. And remember that as I get older, my thoughts and ideas and even experience are getting sharper. I'm gaining wisdom over the years, which is hopefully useful to many of you. I've made many mistakes in the past that I'm embarrassed by, but I've been prudent enough to learn from them. I know which cars you'll follow that will just end up crashing. But if I do make mistakes, please have the wisdom to forgive me. Remember, humans make mistakes, and I'm still human, at least for now.
So today, I'm super excited to take you behind the scenes of our CGI intro creation. We managed to pull off something pretty incredible. A high-quality CGI sequence created entirely on laptops. But more on that game-changing hardware later. First, let me walk you through our process. We kicked things off using Stable Diffusion for our concept art. This AI workflow helped us rapidly generate and iterate on visual ideas for the intro, giving us a solid foundation to build upon. Next, we moved to Blender. Here, we composed the 3D environment based on our Stable Diffusion concept and created those dynamic camera movements you see in the intro. After exporting from Blender, we took our footage into Premiere. We applied LUTs and did a basic color grade, establishing the overall color palette and mood. Then it was over to Adobe After Effects for a more detailed color grade. We used the Magic Bullet plugin, which was crucial in achieving the specific visual style we were after. Now, you might be wondering how we managed to handle this complex workflow without a massive render farm or high-end workstations. Well, that's where things get interesting. The secret behind this entire production was the Intel Core ultra-powered laptops we used. These aren't your average laptops, they're what we call AI PCs. And the key difference is that they're equipped with a neural processing unit or NPU. This specialized chip is a game changer for AI-related tasks because of optimized workload distribution, where the NPU complements the functions of the CPU and GPU, ensuring that no single processor gets overwhelmed. It can handle sustained, heavily used AI workloads at low power, allowing the CPU and GPU to focus on more intensive tasks like 3D rendering in Blender or video processing in Premiere Pro. Hence, this overall efficiency meant we could try out more ideas and refine our work faster than ever before. What's even more exciting is that Intel has collaborated with over 100 independent software vendors, ISVs like Adobe and many others to optimize these applications for AI PCs. This collaboration ensures that you get the best possible experience, letting you focus on what matters, creating better content. And this is how this intelligent division of labor allowed us to create this high-quality CGI intro without being tied to a massive workstation. It's opening up new possibilities for creators, and for those of you interested in learning more about these Intel Core Ultra processors and AI-capable PCs, check out the link in the description.